Item 5.7, Jennifer, you wanted to put that one?
Yeah, this is an item, an agreement between the County of Alameda and the City of Emeryville to participate in the Community Development Block Grant Program, which we have done over the years. But I was surprised at one item that was included as a requirement, and I asked staff about it, and I just want to bring this forward to the council. Let me find the spot. So as one of the agreements, or I guess a condition to the agreement with the county, there was something I hadn't noticed before, which said that it provides that the city must have a policy prohibiting the use of excessive force by law enforcement agencies within its jurisdiction against any individual engaged in nonviolent civil rights demonstrations, and a policy of enforcing applicable state and local laws against physically barring entrance to or exit from a facility or location which is the subject of such nonviolent civil rights demonstrations within jurisdictions. It was the first I remember seeing of that, so I asked staff about that, and I had a timely response from the city manager and city attorney saying, and I'll just summarize rather than read it, that basically excessive force is illegal in any context, and we comply with the state's laws, and therefore we've covered that requirement. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Since I'm not a lawyer. And I just wanted to put to the council that I'm glad that we are covered in terms of this, but I appreciated the explicit nature in this request, specifically looking at civil rights, nonviolent civil rights demonstrations. And although it may not be necessary, I wanted to ask the council if you would support putting forward an explicit policy such as that.
Are you asking for it to be tied to something, or that we have a standard that we meet, or?
I thought that I could leave it up to our legal team to figure out where it would fit best and how basically to comply. I'm sure other jurisdictions, given that this language is in here, I would expect that there would be a model to follow, but I thought it seemed like a good idea to have something that was specific and explicit in that way.
Well, I know that the police department has an extensive set of general orders that sort of govern their operations and provide direction to their officers about how they're supposed to comport themselves, and they do have a policy related to excessive force. It's not specific to the particular identification of non-civil or non-violent civil rights demonstrations. It's just a general order that's much broader. And so to the extent we're going to start adopting policies about how the police should operate, it's really something that it would be in the context of a general order for the police department to develop. And then that's something that, if I'm not mistaken, the chief can correct me, but that might be subject to bargaining with or meet and confer with the POA and things of that nature. So
I wonder if you could furnish us with the language that is in our existing policy about
I can get a copy of the general order from the chief, and we can forward that on to you, certainly.
Would that be helpful?
I'd like to see that. Yeah.
Did you have a comment?
Basically, our general orders are utilized throughout the state. We actually get our general orders through a company called Lexipol that has probably about 80% of the municipal law enforcement agencies in the state. They supply the general orders for them. So I don't know of any, and I'm going through the update of our general orders now, and have been through the use of force policies. I don't know of any that do a specific incident of you shall not use excessive force in incident A. There's a lot of issues, a lot of problems with that. And one is, what is excessive force? Excessive force is dealt with on a case-by-case basis. And you have to put it into an order, it would have to be defined as what is excessive in this instance, and it's impossible to do at that point. Our general order basically says that what the law says is that the police officer shall not use shall use only that force necessary to effect arrest, prevent escape, or overcome resistance. And the circumstances of the incident dictate the level of force that we have, and there's we don't call it escalating now, but there is an escalation of that force that goes all the way from verbal to deadly force, depending on the circumstances of the incident. So to say what is excessive becomes very difficult, and so our order is very broad, and our order is thou shalt not use excessive force in any incident. So, and we evaluate each incident. When there's a use of force, there is what we call a unusual incident report written that comes to the command staff, and we evaluate every use of force, physical force, and to determine whether it was appropriate or not. So to have a specific one to say we won't use excessive force, I think it opens us up on the other end to the question of what is excessive and why did you do this when your policy says you can't use excessive force. So.
Yeah, well, and I can see how it needs to be broad and it needs to be flexible enough to deal with different circumstances. So maybe seeing that language would be helpful for me. And I'm curious because this is federal funding coming through the state, coming through the county, correct? That we're
these revisions were really they just came from some staff attorney from HUD. Mm-hmm. And
how do you really feel
other
about
than that,
oh, that's official.
What its origination was, other than that, mm-hmm. I don't know. And all the various cities that are within Alameda County had their agreements. We brought these agreements to you in June, or I believe it was. All the cities in Alameda County that are part of this program are having to go back and get these agreements reapproved because somebody through HUD and I think in Washington, D.C. wants this language in these agreements. So they weren't in your prior agreement, and we felt that we had an obligation to bring them back to you. I would just add on to what the chief says is that if you get into situations where there is we have a lawsuit and there's an issue of use of force, the language in your general orders can often be brought into that litigation, and how they're worded and what they say can be, can become an issue, a central issue in that litigation, and actually having general orders that have been sort of looked at and gone over and blessed by various attorneys that litigate these types of things, and they generate general orders that are sort of followed and adopted by agencies throughout the state. Gives you a sense that they're crafted in a way that complies with the law and isn't inadvertently open you up to some additional liability just based on the wording of what it says. So that would be my concern about trying to further adopt something more specific to these individual instances, because I do think, as I said in my memo to the city manager, or the email to the city manager, I do believe that our force policy that is in place covers this, and likewise the issue of police officers are hired to enforce the law, and so I think that in and of itself is consistent with the request that we have a policy that the officers enforce the law. Well, of course that's what they do. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Do you know how any other jurisdictions have dealt with this new language as well?
No, I don't. This has just come out, and everybody's scrambling because there's a deadline to actually get these agreements signed and back to the county. I want to say it's the end of this month, if I'm not mistaken. It might even be sooner.
No, that's right. It coincides with the federal fiscal year, mm-hmm. which begins on October 1st. So we got to get this done before October 1st.
Well, I have no intention of holding up this agreement. I'm just curious about this kind of other issue and something I hadn't been aware of. So I would appreciate if staff could get us the language just so that we have a chance to look
Sure.
at it. And with that, I'll move this item. Thank you for the information.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.